Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to week 8, not only of the NFL season, but also week 8 of the Don't Ask Me Why podcast, available to you in so many mediums, on YouTube, Spotify, and pretty much everywhere you get your consume your podcast. I'm with my esteemed colleague, Reggie. Reggie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. This is the one of the greatest times of the year. We have hockey. We have World Series approaching. We have NFL, of course. The basketball season just started. We got the cricket championships.
Yeah, cricket's big.
What's the other one? The fake tennis game? Pickleball. Yeah, that's a new craze.
As a viewer, I'm big into pickleball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, love to watch it. Yeah, that and cricket.
Pickleball, huh?
Yeah, I wonder if Major League scouts pick up any pictures from cricket, because those guys look like they really bring it.
Yeah.
Plate or whatever they call it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But
anyway, let's jump into it. Reg, last week, the big emphasis for us is our picks week to week and providing some input for our viewers on picks that they would consider. Yep. And let me fall on the sword. My picks were bad last week. I was 0 for 3. I was saddened by it. It was a crazy week. I get that, but I'm not going to fall back on that or make an excuse. But when I thought about it Monday, I was kind of like, I said, you got to pick yourself back up. Like Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live, played by Al Franken. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
Yes.
That was how I turned things around. So my picks this week are going to be spot on. Otherwise, I'll have to pick a different character next week. But I feel good about my picks this week, and I've seen yours, and I'm sure that you feel good about those too.
Hey, it's a team thing. So, you'll have a bad week. I'll potentially have a bad week, which is highly unlikely because I'm very good at this, I think. But ultimately, we as a team didn't perform to our liking. I look at the DeAndre Swift run in the fourth quarter to wind the game down against Miami. He gets tripped up at the 6. If he doesn't get tripped up, he scores a touchdown. We make the over nicely. We're 500. It happens sometimes. So we're not going to cry over spilled milk. We're going to pour another bowl of milk and try not to spill it this upcoming week.
My mea culpa sort of was the Rams kicker missing 3 kicks against Pittsburgh, which would have made all the difference right there.
Absolutely.
And they cut him on Monday. So
surprise.
Yeah, I didn't have any issue with that.
Back to our conversation about kickers last week.
Yeah, right.
That bus is coming right around the corner.
Yeah, your gold on special teams is your kickers.
Yeah.
You have good kickers, your special teams aren't going to be that big of a force. So when we look at last week, it brings about, some conversation on, teams that might be displaying themselves as pretenders, maybe started out good. And then, when we see a little bit more of the work, they might be, fading out and people that we gave too much credit for in the beginning.
Yeah. You have the Bills. That truly is just befuddling how they are. Well, let's not say they. I'm just going to kind of put the onus on Josh Allen. I really expected him to perform at a much higher rate than he's performing currently. So, as a leader, as the one who's getting the big bucks, we look at the QBs to perform, and he's not doing that. I was shocked that it was a game, let alone them losing to New England. And I had mentioned a few weeks ago how the Bills need to win a game against a team not named the Commanders. And we kind of went a little back and forth on that. But to that point, they need to win something on the road. So I really am looking at them like, okay, you all are just one game over 500. I don't know if you all are the real deal. The hype train that has followed you all for the past couple of seasons. There's something going on. So I'm not sure, but the Bills is really, very concerning in my opinion.
Yeah. And I can see why you would say that. But they've maintained in terms of their record. So I really don't put them in any kind of a pretender category. Disappointment, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, when we get down a little bit into, the meat of the season, which I consider to be like week 11, week 12, after the trade deadline, and let things shake out a little bit, I see Buffalo being every bit the factor at the end as you get into the playoffs.
I hope so.
Yeah. And the Lions, I picked them last week, getting points on the road at Baltimore. To me, that game was an anomaly. I don't. Yeah, it just was to me. Baltimore jumped out early. They went down in 7 plays and scored. And the Lions, even on third down plays, when they would stop Baltimore, penalty, defensive holding, interference, whatever, and it just kept on piling up. So I'll look at that as an anomaly.
Absolutely. I tend to believe that was more of an anomaly. The Lions are a much better team than what they showed. And I like what the coach mentioned after the game. He didn't make the excuse of they weren't ready for the game. He said they had the energy, they came in, they were ready. He gave a lot of that credit to Lamar Jackson just playing unbelievably. Yeah. And so I love that about the coach, where he didn't, I'm not going to say throw his team under the bus and say that they weren't ready, they ain't come to play. He said they were ready. They came to play. They had high energy. Things just didn't work out. The better team won that game. So I like that message at the end of that game. That really just became ugly. And I love the fact that we really waxed poetic last week about the Lions and our expectations. And boy, they made us look kind of foolish, made me look kind of foolish in a sense. But I do agree that this is more of an anomaly, a one-off. I think they're going to pick things back up in these upcoming weeks. Their next game is against a Raiders team that's struggling.
Yeah, I don't know if I like them by 8.5, but I'll like them to win for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the Chargers, that's another team that just, it seems like over the last 2 years, hasn't played up to expectations. Like offensive stars, great quarterback, obviously, bitten by the injury bug a little bit over the last 2 years. But for heaven's sakes, they just don't seem to get into that upper tier in their division and their conference. I still think they're a threat to make the playoffs, but beyond that, I don't see a lot there. So I would call them at this point, if there's anyone in that group that's a pretender, I would say it might be the Chargers.
Yeah, they might be the greatest pretender, quite frankly.
And I'll add the Vikings to that. They were 1-5, 1-4 for a reason. And it's that they're not that good. And the 49ers have their injury problems and some key players out. I don't know. And the Vikings just played really creatively on offense, which I love to see. I wish my team, which is Washington, I wish that they would show a little bit of that creativity now and then when you're up against a great team. You might remember if you watched the game, I guess it was late in the first or early second. Cousins takes a snap, throws it immediately left on a screen. He throws it back the other way across the field, and he throws it, and that guy runs down the sidelines, inside the 5-yard line. So, I like Minnesota's coaching. Cousins can get things done, but I still find them to be pretenders. They're 3-4, I think. Is that right? Is that what you got?
3-4.
Yeah, 3-4. So I still find them to be pretenders. When we look at, teams that appeared to be dominant early on, and then they've run into a little bit of a rough patch, do you see that as cause for concern? Maybe they're going to have trouble going forward, or do you think that it's just a bump in the road?
The 49ers, 2 losses in a row.
Yeah.
It's the Cleveland game. That was wet, muddy, nasty environment.
Yeah.
Once again, Myles Garrett rears his ugly head and disrupts things. So, he's that wild card. So that was we'll give him a pass on that one. Brock Purdy, year 2. And that's one of the things that we kind of lose sight about with Brock Purdy is that he's been playing so well, so consistent ever since he's become the starter, that we overlook the fact that he's less than 16 games into his NFL career. So he hasn't played a full NFL season,
right,
on top of dealing with a pretty severe elbow injury during the NFC Championship game. So for him to come back playing the way he was playing up to that point, I think is just super impressive. I've been hearing stuff about the 49ers regretting trading Trey Lance. It's nonsense. It's ignorance.
Yeah.
When I hear that, people are just, they build you up just to tear you down. So the same media personalities who were just singing his praises are the ones who are saying asinine statements like that. They should have held on to Trey Lance. This is a bad stretch, but the eye test says Mr. Irrelevant is still very much relevant. So that's my take.
But late breaking kind of is that he had some concussion symptoms after the game on Monday, and especially on the way back to the West Coast. And he's questionable to play this weekend. So that would mean Sam Darnold, which I think is okay. I believe that Sam Darnold has enough experience and whatnot and is indoctrinated enough into the system now that he can jump in and play the part if Purdy can't go.
Do you ever wonder where the D came from in Darnold? Why can't it just be Sam Arnold?
Well, yeah, it could be, but things like that tend to go back, generations. So I don't know. Now that would be, if you want to ask him a question, like in a press conference that would confound him and make him look at you like, you had 2 heads, that would be it.
Okay.
Like what's with the D?
What's with the D?
Oh,
you mean our defense? Yeah, we play a great game. No, the D in your name, in the front of your last name.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I'll give you $20 if you get in to a press conference and ask him that. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
But we look at playoff implications for teams that hit a bump in the road or whatever. I think that it's a little bit early to start looking at teams that have had a little bit of a, that have fallen back a little bit, that started out real hot. I think it's still too early. To me, the meat of the schedule, and when you really start to take note of who's on the rise, I feel that that's somewhere around like week 11, week 12, especially in a 17-game season. It was a 16-game season, but now I think with 17, around week 11, week 12, you want to take stock of what teams are at that point. So I'm not really ready to worry about anyone that's like 4-2 or 5-2 right now.
Certainly not the Niners.
No, not
certainly not the Niners.
And I think I've mentioned on prior shows that Mike Tomlin, I believe, is the best coach in the NFL. And the track record is, you go ahead and argue about it if you want. I can't even believe that there are people in Pittsburgh or Steeler fans in general that don't realize how great he is. You talk about unreasonable expectations year to year. I think that Pittsburgh fans expect that he should win the Super Bowl every year. He's had 17 winning seasons in a row.
Yeah. And I wish I could share that same sort of feeling of a team, my team, that the expectation level is so high on an annual basis, like a Patriot fan over the past 20 years, a Steeler fan throughout their franchise's history. The level of consistency that they've shown. I know they probably had a bad stretch in that late 80s, early 90s window, but outside of that, they've been pretty consistent, and he's carried on that tradition. We all know of the history of them only having three head coaches in the past 60 years or so. That's crazy. That's amazing. So for what Tomlin has done throughout his career, has just been nothing short of amazing. I second that. Right now, I will probably say that he is the best coach in the NFL. If you polled people on the street and just asked them, or NFL fans on the street and just asked them, what is the Steelers record right now? I guarantee at least half of them are going to say they're below 500. They're 4-2. They're 4-2. When I saw that on Sunday, I was like, they're 4-2. How?
Yeah.
So that just speaks to, I'm saying he's a magician in a sense. And so that speaks to his greatness and just what he does for that team and how he inspires a team and keeps them competitive on a consistent basis.
Yeah. So we have the trade deadline coming up on Halloween. The Eagles, of course, have been busy. And I like that. I like teams that are sort of jumping ahead of the deadline and saying like, hey, we're sure of where we're going and what we need to do and who we need to get. We're moving. We're not going to wait for the deadline to see if we can, make some kind of a deal. We're going for what we want now because they know that they're going to be a factor coming down the stretch. They know that.
Absolutely.
As far as the trade deadline is concerned, being next week, this week determines who are buyers and who are sellers, right?
Yeah.
And I think Washington is a perfect example of that. If they lose, they're 3-5, and they're going to be big underdogs this week. So they have big time players on the trading block, as we all know, Chase Young and others. And I would look for them to not only be sellers if they lose badly to Philadelphia, but I might look at wholesale changes on the coaching staff too. Ron Rivera to be let go, and then maybe bring in Eric Bieniemy to run the second half of the year to sort of get things started for next year.
Yeah. It kind of, harkens back to a conversation that we had about Bieniemy succeeding Riverboat Ron eventually. So it may come sooner rather than later. I know Josh Allen had a lot to say after the game. He's quite fed up with the current state of affairs. I think he's really mad at his the offensive line and how they're just not protecting.
Yeah, but the play calling has been unimaginative. I mean, I've been watching every single game and like against the Giants, who are terrible against the run, what do the first two series? They throw the ball, 3 times in a row. But I like back to the trade deadline. Really, NFL trades really aren't that active during this period. You'll have a few. But like you were saying, as far as those teams who are
who see themselves as competitive, who see themselves in the championship game, potentially Super Bowl. You saw what the 49ers did in bringing McCaffrey over and trading for McCaffrey last year.
Right.
And then you see what the Eagles just did, bringing in trading for Kevin Byard.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. That shores up their secondary even more. So that defense is already pretty stout. So adding him.
Contenders are looking for game changers. That's what they're looking for. To your point about McCaffrey last year, they're looking for teams that, okay, we're going to be in the playoffs, but we want to win the whole thing. And so that's what that was all about. Injuries, Deshaun Watson, who knows? That looks to be a, debacle from a contract standpoint. Because, with that kind of money, you got to have a guy that's going to be able to play all the time.
I don't know if it's for lack of trying. I think just sort of bad luck, bad opportunity where things just happen. The shoulder injury, I think it's, kind of misleading. That shoulder injury that he was dealing with, it sort of came out of nowhere. I don't know if it was lingering, but then it persisted. He comes back, head bounces off the turf. He gets pulled past his concussion protocol. And the coach says, hey, you know what? Let's just go ahead and hold you out. And let's keep the third string wonder, PJ Walker, in the game. So it really is kind of concerning. And the most recent news that we have is that PJ Walker is starting again this upcoming week. So it is concerning. The ROI certainly isn't there, but they're winning. Yeah. They're winning. They're above 500. I believe they are 4-2. They're 4-2. So it's not much to be upset about, but if that record were 2-4, it would be a lot of issues. But it is kind of intriguing, and hopefully, for his sake and for their sake, he does bounce back. But it's a little concerning.
Yeah. Let's jump on to some questionable calls from referees last week. There were several.
The most egregious one was the 4th and 1, and that still is a Rams game. Clearly, his knee was down and he was short, and they went to the booth. And I say this much, where instant replay, when they brought it back several years ago, because, instant replay throughout the history of the NFL over the past 30 years, it was here, then it was gone, then it came back. And they did make some enhancements, some changes to streamline the process, where if we're going to the booth or we're going to New York, we're going to get this right. And 9 times out of 10, they're getting it right. This is that 1%, that one time that they didn't get it right. And it could have, changed the tide of the games. Who knows if the Rams are going to go back down and score, because they need to score a touchdown. Right. But ultimately, they didn't get the opportunity. So I think that was one of the egregious ones among a few others.
But a caveat to that, though, Reg, is that, if you're the Rams, I fully believe that because of a situation like that, where you're going to need to challenge a call late in the game, you have to save a timeout or save a challenge anyway for that. Because if you don't have any challenges left, there's nothing you can do unless it's inside of 2 minutes, I believe.
I don't like that point, because it shouldn't come down to the team to have to burn a timeout for a call that the average fan viewer who sees that. And if we're seeing it on the broadcast, the folks in New York or up in the booth or up in the sky or wherever they're floating should see that even more, and they can slow it down and everything and zoom in. So all in all, that was just that I was in a casino when that happened in New Orleans, and and there were just a bunch of groans and just yells all of a sudden when that call was officially made. So yeah, that was tough. I know the Philly game had a few. I know, although Detroit got got stomped.
Yeah.
There was a lot of holding and just things that seem very abnormal this week in terms of the amount of penalties. It was almost like a directive was sent down from the league office to call more penalties. So let's be a little more aggressive with these interference calls and holding and things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, you give Lamar Jackson 12 seconds in the pocket,
somebody holding.
You're going to be able to find somebody. Maybe not me, but you're going to be able to find somebody. I figure, I've got an idea that you can throw a football, accurately, maybe 10 yards.
10,
you think, maybe
8 to 10.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, how would you like to be, Darryl Baker, the Indianapolis cornerback that got called for 2 penalties in the last 47 seconds that ended the game, that allowed Cleveland to win. So,
just got to start swallowing the whistle. You are playing God with the outcome of these games.
I think that referees are vain quite a bit.
Not like baseball umps and referee vain, but they do have some pride and a little, ego and machismo when it comes to their ability to call games correctly. So absolutely, I do agree.
So let's jump to key week 8 matchups. A lot of things are going to shake out this weekend. There's some really big games going on. We've come up with 5. What are the games that you see as the big ones this week?
I think the obvious huge game is Cincy at San Fran. Cincy, we didn't necessarily include them in that Great Pretenders segment. I know you're a big Cincy fan and a proponent of Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
that's SAT word. Thank you. But Cincy and San Fran, this is a Super Bowl rematch. And matter of fact, this will be I think they met in the Super Bowl 3 times, and then this matchup again. But nonetheless, this will be a test for both teams. It's in San Fran. This will be a good opportunity for San Fran to bounce back, let everybody know the house isn't fully burned down to the ground. And this will be a great road victory for Cincinnati to let folks know, especially in the AFC North, that we're not dead just yet.
Eagles at Commanders, I've thought about it as being a key matchup, but now Washington, I believe, is done. They were so bad against New York last week that I don't think there's anything there. They played well against them the first time, but I just don't see it.
But like you've mentioned before, Washington always plays the Eagles tough. They gave them their first loss last year. They played them pretty tough earlier this year. So when those teams match up, it's always going to be a tough one. A game that I'm definitely not looking to place any money on.
Jags at Pittsburgh. You got to consider that a key game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Jags, they can further cement their place in not only the AFC South and put Houston on notice and let them know that you all aren't there just yet.
Right.
But at the same time, Pittsburgh, like we were just saying, by smoke and mirrors, by sleight of hand, they are 4-2. So this will be a good win for them. Although I don't think it's a huge win for either team. If the Jags were to win or if Pittsburgh were to win, it's a pretty evenly matched game. But it is a definite key matchup for 2 playoff contenders in the AFC.
Let's move into fan mail. You had a question from someone in Mississippi, I believe.
Well, that's all right. Shout out to Mississippi. That's where folks are from. So always got love for Mississippi. This is James. He says, "Hey, Roger, Reggie, this is James from Jackson, Mississippi." Jackson, that's Heinz County, if I'm not mistaken. He says, who is better? Who is the better Josh Allen? Josh Allen or Josh Allen?
Not sure.
Any thoughts on who the better Josh Allen is? So he's referring to the Josh Allen in Buffalo and then the Josh Allen in Jacksonville. Both are all pro at their position. Right. Jacksonville, Josh Allen, edge rusher. I believe he's second or tied for lead in sacks with 7 sacks. So he's really flashed and he looks great this year. And then Josh Allen, he's having not his greatest year thus far, but still, he's done enough to earn him as possibly the best Josh Allen in the league. So to answer that question, who the best Josh Allen is, I would say right now is the Josh Allen down in what county is that?
I know it. Oh God, I can't come up with it.
In that county,
in Jackson.
Yeah.
I'll come up with it, but
right.
But I'll take Kansas City Josh Allen at the end of the year of those two.
You said Kansas City,
Buffalo. That was a Freudian slip.
Right. Freudian.
Yeah. Well, we're fortunate again to have Chris joining us from Hollywood Casino.
What's up, gentlemen?
Hey.
Yeah. Thanks for coming back with us in week 8. Obviously, your segment in week 1 was one of our, best. Well, it was our best segment in terms of viewership,
cash, money,
and yeah, and the checks in the mail and all that.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, but we had several questions. We were thinking about, what kind of questions do we still want to ask Chris, given his role at Hollywood Casino? For people that didn't see episode 1, if you didn't, please go back and watch it. A lot of people are still going back and watching that. Chris is a manager and ticket writer at Hollywood Casino at the sportsbook. And what that means, ticket writer, is when you go to the window to make your bets, he's the person that's actually there taking your bets. And managing, he's, overseeing everything at the sportsbook. So I came up with some questions that I wanted to ask you, and I know that Reggie did as well. Why don't you start, Reggie, with one of your questions for Chris?
Chris, it's great to have you back.
What's up, Reg? Good to see you, buddy.
Absolutely. Likewise. So I don't know if you recall when you were last on the show, we discussed NFL players gambling and the inconsistent penalties and the unclear ground rules that were currently in place. And so just so happens a few weeks later, the league shored up the penalty guidelines. Any thoughts on this coincidental change and how the Don't Ask Me Why podcast was able to shape NFL policy, if you will?
Well, I think the first thing that's pretty obvious is Commissioner Goodell watches and subscribes to the podcast, and everyone else should likewise.
Right.
Hello.
Now, but going to your point, there have been some changes, and they have tried to establish some guidelines, which is a positive step. And it's going to continue to be a fluid situation. I think as new situations arise, they might have to fine tune some of these penalties and guidelines, but it's a start, and it at least gives players an idea of where they stand, what they can and can't do, at least as of right now. So I think it's a positive step for the league, and it's also giving other leagues a basis of where they might want to start with some of their policies, procedures, penalties, and all that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's good that they're doing that. So
yeah,
100%.
Great question, Reggie. So one thing that I thought about, Chris, is at your casino, for instance, at the sports book, what is the difference between the handle between college and pro? And does that fluctuate a lot during the year? Like when you get closer to bowl games or the playoffs and things like that, does that number tend to change quite a bit?
Not as much as you might think, Raj. NFL's king. NFL's always going to be king. You could probably call it about a 3-to-1 ratio for NFL versus college. Now, you're going to have those certain weeks throughout the year. You might have a slate of NFL games that aren't that appealing to the consumer, and you might have a few big time college games. Michigan, Ohio State. Last week we had Ohio State, Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
That was heavily wagered on. But week to week, you're looking at about 75% NFL, 25% NCAA. And as you also mentioned, Raj, as we get towards the bowl season, college football playoff, you'll see the slight uptick here and there, but week to week, not so much. NFL is going to pretty much hold a pretty substantial market share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to know. I had no idea on that, and I, because I took into consideration, as I think you and I even talked about one day, just the sheer volume of college games, versus pro. And it's interesting to me for you to say that you take, maybe a 3-to-1 ratio more on pro. It
seems like the volume might actually play against the NCAA a little bit. It's almost can be a little overwhelming, a little intimidating to some bettors. Some of these schools you don't know that much about. It's hard to find the information. Mm-hmm. It's hard to become informed and make a good, wise betting decision on a lot of these games, where the NFL, we get to know the players over the years. We know the names, we know the faces, we know the matchups, we know the divisions and all those things that go along with it. So it's an easier wager to go NFL because they're more informed.
Right.
I know that Virginia and North Carolina game upset quite a few folks. So to your point, that would scare the what out of me, because that stuff is just like, anxiety ridden. Like, how in the world does this happen? But like you said, NFL is king. I stick with the NFL for the most part. So that's that. Speaking of picks, our picks record going into week 8 is 17-12-1. And that's a 58% win percentage. Can you put that in perspective for our viewers and listeners from an odds maker's vantage point of how significant that winning clip is?
17-12-1. Is that what you said, Reg?
Yes, sir.
Over 58% winners. How can I put this? That's damn good. That's damn good. A professional bettor that does this for a living, which I would never recommend, is looking to hit 55% to grind out a small profit. So if you can get up anywhere up near that 60% mark, you are well ahead of the curve, my friend. Now, maintaining that percentage is going to be you and Roger's challenge throughout the rest of the year.
Yes.
That is what separates the cream, so to speak.
Yeah. And I had a 0 for week last week. So I didn't help last week. Reggie helped us a little bit. He went 2 for 3. So we need to get it back on track this week, which we will. Another thing when it comes to handle and the amount of bets and percentages of bets on different things, I was wondering, and I also wonder if it is different from sportsbook to sportsbook, or if it's sort of universal when it comes to percentage of the wagers that you take being prop bets versus team bets or over-unders.
The prop bet market is one of those markets that's kind of been a slow, steady grind, and it's had an uptick each and every year since more and more props have become available to the general public. But as far as how much that actually factors into the handle, it's about 10 to 16%, depending on what sportsbook you go to. But a pretty universal number is about 12.5%, 13% right now across the board. Mm-hmm. I do think that's a market that will steadily over time keep increasing. Not to huge numbers at any point, but maybe crack that 20%, 22% barrier eventually. People enjoy those prop bets. They like to find their fantasy player and wager on him, or a player that they know on their favorite hometown team that they think they might know something more about, and they like to have that wager and not be so locked into the game itself.
Yeah. So this doesn't apply to people that bet online or use online sports books, but as you know, I go to the sports book.
Correction, you drive 300 miles to the sports book. Right. One way.
300 miles. Yeah. It's 300 miles from Leesburg to the sports book. Yeah. And so normally I have to leave a day ahead. But
we appreciate that, Rush. We appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. And I'm only
gas up, oil change.
I'm there for 15 minutes. So,
Yeah.
but when it comes to etiquette, and I grew up with at least one parent that didn't have a whole lot of patience, and I'm sort of one of those type of people too. So, all of us get kind of antsy when you have a few minutes left before kickoff, and you got the guy up there with leaning on the counter and legs spread, and he hasn't even thought about what he wants to bet and doesn't have any concept that there are 15 people behind him. How is that difficult for you? And is there anything that you ever can say to people like that, or do you just sort of have to grin and bear it?
Well, you got to roll with the punches. I mean, that's just something that's going to happen every day, every week. But you touched on it. Do some research beforehand. Prepare your bets before you get to the window as best you can. And also have a game plan where if the game you're looking to wager on, the line has changed, or if it's a prop bet, as we discussed earlier, that's no longer available, have a secondary option in mind so that you're not fumbling and stumbling and taking up an exponential amount of time at the window when you've got, a half dozen or a dozen people behind you trying to get those last minute wagers in as well. But, and also I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions. Yeah. We're more than happy to help you at the window. If you need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of assistance, that's absolutely fine. But don't feel bad about speaking up and asking for a little bit of help.
Yeah. And that's a great thing about going to the sports book too, is that a lot of people that just bet online, since it's become the craze that it has been and more widely accepted, they don't have that advice necessarily on hand that you can get at the sports book, because people like Chris and others in sports books, they're more than happy to clarify things for you if you're unsure about how to make a bet or whatever.
Absolutely. We have a great staff, a knowledgeable staff. I know, Rod, you've dealt with many of our ticket writers, and they're more than happy to help you, get that wager in or provide a little bit of assistance, whatever you need.
They're fantastic. Last thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you go to a casino, not necessarily the sports book, but when you go to a casino on game days, people are wearing their jerseys and their garb, for the team. Do you find that almost 100% or a really high majority, like if a guy's wearing a Ravens jersey, right, and it's like 12:30 on a Sunday and they play at 1:00. Are you pretty sure when you see them walking up that they're going to make a play on the Ravens, that they're going to bet on the Ravens?
I think you can assume some of these bets before they even make it to the window. Yeah. You can, if you can learn how to read people and you've been around the industry for a few years, you can probably guess some of these wagers before they actually are vocalized to you. Absolutely.
Reggie calls it homerism, right?
Homer, yes.
So
I think that's the defined term in the dictionary is homerism, Reg. So you got that right on the money.
Yeah, not the Simpson homerism. I'm talking about the homerism.
The home team. That's right.
Right. The brand new Lamar Jackson jersey, and they didn't know who their starting running back was a week prior. Homerism. So
that's right. And I think I want to clarify one point that I think you guys touched on earlier. The Steelers Stadium is now AcriSURE Stadium, but it will always be the big ketchup bottle to me.
Yeah.
Who?
AcriSURE.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
AcriSURE?
AcriSURE by the shore.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. Say that 5 times in a row.
Good luck.
So Chris, you got to well, I'm not going to tell you what one of my plays is, but it might involve Pittsburgh. So I like them this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope you're right this week.
Yeah. Chris,
Teaser.
appreciate it, bud. As always. And I'll see you soon. And hopefully you'll come back in a few
Once
weeks.
Again.
Always a pleasure,
Much
guys.
appreciated, Chris. Yes, sir.
See you soon.
Appreciate it, Mel.
So, Reg, that was, again, great to have Chris with us. I think it provides a lot of knowledge, not only to people who make bets at a sports book like I do, but just everybody in general who's making bets on college football and pro football.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can become nerve-wracking. And one of the things that you mentioned in terms of online sports betting is all of these prop bets, they're right in front of you. And there are so many, from the entire game to the first quarter, second quarter, per player. So there are so many different flavors of bets, and that can be intimidating. So I don't necessarily knock you for driving 600 miles one way to the casino.
It's not 600, it's 30. Okay. So, you know, I'm not driving to Illinois. I'm not driving in the middle of the country. Yeah. So anyhow, let's get into the most important part of every week, and that is our picks for week 8.
Redemption.
Like we mentioned in the beginning, you know, we were 2-4 last week. Took a little bit of a tumble, but overall we are what, Reg?
We are 17-12-1, hitting at a 58% clip.
Which is over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah. And to Chris's point, we got to maintain it. So we definitely got to bounce back this week.
Who do you like this week, Reg?
This week, I love, and overall, the variety of picks that we had to choose from, it's really not that tempting, not that appealing in terms of the game and the matchups and some of these odds that I see out here. But I was able to snatch 3 of them up. I like the Falcons -2.5 at the Titans. They got Will Levis coming out there. So I don't anticipate this being a high-scoring affair. From a quarterback standpoint, I think they're going to be it's about a push between Ritter and Levis, although I've never seen Levis play. But they lost Bayard, so that may be an opportunity for Pitts and Drake London to possibly get off. We'll see what's up with Bijan with that mystery injury, but I do like the Falcons -2.5 in Tennessee. My over-under, I always go with the over-under. I like the Eagles and Commanders going over 43.5. Like you were saying, it's probably not the best game to put any action on from a spread standpoint. I do feel the Eagles will win this comfortably, but the Commanders always make it a matchup. They always make it tough and interesting. But I do definitely see this going over 43.5 rather easily. So Eagles and Commanders over 43.5. And finally, I like the Giants +3 at home against the Jets. So to your point, they just got a paintbrush and a roller and just rolled over the end zone and put Giants and then went to center and went to the 50-yard line and got a spray.
Feel like they're at home. It's the same thing.
Right. Yeah. So nonetheless, I do like the Giants +3. I like Tyrod. He's steadying the ship, a rather rocky ship. I know Daniel Jones is ruled out this upcoming week, but the Giants have been playing well. And that's the job of a backup, to come in, steady the ship, and pull out some victories for you until the main guy comes back, if he is the main guy when he does come back. But I do like the Giants +3 at home versus the Jets.
Yeah. Well, I will bounce back this week. I will make that solemn promise to you right now. I will bounce back from a bad week last week. You know, Reggie has a word for the type of picks I'm making this week, but I'm not gonna go there. So I like the LA Rams getting 6.5 at Dallas. And the reason I like that is because I don't think that Dallas's defense can play to the level that Pittsburgh's defense played last week with the pass rush and things like that. So and I think that the Rams might get a running back this week to help them out a little bit. And even with the running backs that they picked up off the practice squad last week, they'll have a little bit more experience under their belt. Cooper Kupp his third game back. It's a huge game for the Rams if they're going to stay consequential. So that's why I believe that they will, at the very least, cover 6.5 against Denver. The play that I'm making that Reggie probably fits more into the category of ballsy is New England plus 9.5 at Miami. I think that Miami losing last week kind of brought them down to earth a little bit. So when you couple that with New England gaining confidence from beating Buffalo, and you know, the Belichick factor, and you know, having a way of you know, game planning for games like this against Miami, I do not see Miami running up a big score against New England, and I look for the game probably to be an under. But I definitely like New England getting 9.5. If they get up like Carolina did 2 weeks ago before they got blown out, don't look for New England to lay down like a rug, like the Panthers did.
If New England wins that game, we may have to have a different discussion about them. Yeah, I'll just say that much.
Because they're going toward the trade deadline now, right? So you know that they don't want to be sellers if they don't have to. If they can somehow find a way to win this game, they're back in the picture. They're back in the discussion a little bit, and I think that they would try to look at trying to make the playoffs the rest of the year. My third pick is Pittsburgh. You know how I feel about their coach. Pittsburgh getting 2.5 at home, and I already forget the name of the stadium that Chris told us. Do you remember it?
I believe the proper term is, are you sure?
Something about sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not the ketchup bottle anymore, but it's something about Assure or Assurion or something like that. So
it's the little drink that to keep you regular. Ensure, I believe is what it's called.
I don't think that's it. That's not it. You know, I'll check with Chris again when I see him this weekend. But I like Pittsburgh plus 2.5 at home. They're on a roll. They've won a couple of games. They have all the confidence in the world now. Pickett has been marginally good, if even that. That's even hard to say. And his confidence will build, I believe. And I think with the rabid fan base in Pittsburgh, that they're almost going to will them to win this game. So that's my pick of the week right there. Pittsburgh getting 2.5 at home against Jacksonville. So Reg, you want to recap your picks one more time, and then I'll do mine and we'll roll on out.
Absolutely. I got the Falcons minus 2.5 at Titans. I have the Eagles and Commanders over 43.5. And then I have the Giants plus 3 at home
and that's
versus the Jets.
That's the painted red and blue end zone versus the green and white. Yeah.
Yeah. That Mark Bavaro, Phil Simms uniforms they had on last week.
That's got to give them a big advantage, big home field advantage there.
Yeah, sure.
So, and to recap my picks, I like the Rams plus 6.5 at Dallas in Jerry World. New England plus 9.5 at Miami, 2 road dogs, and then Pittsburgh, my play of the week. Plus 2.5 at home at Ensure or Assurion Stadium or something like that. Plus 2.5 against Jacksonville. So let's pull for 6-0 this week. It sounds reasonable to me. And
I feel it.
And we appreciate everybody joining us. I don't know if we mentioned in the beginning, but again, just to recap, you can find us on YouTube. Again, comment, like, subscribe down below. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple.
Pretty much. If you have a podcast app, you can find us there. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why podcast. So look us up, support, subscribe, and also on YouTube. For those who have subscribed, thank you. We have a growing amount of followers, so we do appreciate it, and we don't say that enough. We do appreciate the subscribers that we do have, the followers on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. TikTok as well. So we do appreciate it. Make sure on YouTube you hit the bell. So when these new episodes drop, you're getting a notification. You can tune in for that DAMW. So make sure you hit the bell.
Appreciate it, folks. Thanks again. Enjoy the games this week, and we will see you again next Thursday when we come up with the next podcast. Yeah.
One last thing. I know you're a rabid baseball fan.
Yeah.
Give me a winner in the Rangers and Diamondbacks
Texas and
series.
Mad Max to win it all.
Okay.
Yep.
Love it. Love it.
Talk to you guys next week. Thank
Peace.
you. Bye.